It's like a never ending story.
What do you find more challenging? Do you think it's the rock climbing, or do you think it's creating an attribution model at Loom?
Definitely the attribution model. With rock climbing, you sort of have yourself to focus on. It's like you in this rock. I think one of the largest challenges about building an attribution model is it's a very, very collaborative effort. I think of all of the data modeling work any analyst or someone building like data models would ever have to work on, building an attribution model is by far the most complex.
Who are the people that you talk to build the one that you've created now? Do you talk to marketing ops or the sales team? Is it a bunch of leadership that are making most of the decisions, or who are all of those stakeholders, as they call them, like that are involved?
To a certain extent, there is like a broad, like maybe some broad level executive might have insight or input into this. Primarily the teams that you're focusing on are the marketing teams and the sales teams. The like go-to-market teams are the ones that have the like bulk of the say here. And on the peripheral, you're also working with engineering teams to make sure that you're tracking the things that you need to be able to track. So like I said, that table is a very large one, but I'd say the core components of this are marketing, sales, and the data folks. It's like building out the model.
And if you were to kind of rate the maturity of your attribution model at Loom, where would you say you're at versus where you want to be?
I was hired as the first data person in March 2020. And so a lot of things have I haven't been solely focused on attribution. There's actually others who have been pushing the ball forward far more than I have. I'd say we're like in the better than average area. And I am probably being a little harsh on myself and like the expectation that we on the data team at Loom have. Like, I think we just always think there's areas for improvement. And it's like one of those things with any company, the business changes, the way that the marketers might want to use some data point might change over time. And so it feels like it's like a constantly molding thing. And one of those things where it's like a never ending story.
And now I'm curious what yours looks like. Like, how is it built? How is your attribution model built there?
Totally. So I think one of the first core things you focus on when you're building an attribution model, and this is applied in all the places that I've worked at, it's like first core problem comes to like sessionization. Like when you're thinking about this attribution model, there's all is it first touch? Is it last touch? Is it multi-touch? That's like, maybe even above what I'm about to talk about. But the core thing is like what led the user to your product, or like what led the user to do something in your product. And the first core thing you have to solve is like, how do I define a session? And so that was like it's also one of the most computationally intense things. If you're not using an event tracking tool that naturally captures the session, like Segment doesn't do that. If you're using Snowplow or another tool that does, this can be significantly easier. But that's the first hurdle, is like, how do we define a session? And most people default to like the Google Analytics, like 30 minutes of inactivity, or if they leave the site, that defines the end of the session. But these are things that ultimately, you sort of do this hand wavy thing, like, oh yeah, session, 30 minutes of activity. And then one person asks the question, like, why did we define it this way? And you instantly get into this snowball of like everyone having a say. And I think that speaks to the challenge that I was mentioning about it being a collaborative effort. There's like all this work that should be done before you even get started. And then at Loom, we kind of cover all the gamuts. Like if you want first touch, last touch, multi-touch, we have that was all part of the solution, so that we left that for the end user. Like, do you want to see the first touch attribution? And then we do like a weighted attribution, or you could do like a decay. So you give weight to the action or channel that most recently, prior to like whatever, it's like visit or sign up, like what was the last thing they saw some advertisement on a display ad, like that gets the bulk of the attribution pie. And then as you move away from that time, it decays. The percentage that gets allocated towards that channel decays.
So do you actually know and track, like if somebody is just viewing a display ad without like doing anything, you know that you targeted this ad to this person, they likely saw it and that becomes part of the model, or do you need them to like take some sort of activity with it?
Right now, yeah, it's an action. That's a good question. Working at a marketing ad agency in the start of my career, I've always had such a skeptical opinion of how things like view through conversions work. And the tech has changed significantly since I was doing this 8-10 years ago. But that sort of stuck with me through my career too. And I think it's an acceptable thing for me because that comes from a place of like wanting concrete truths. And as much as we can at Loom, that's what we try to steer towards. We don't want to get into like fuzzy gray areas in as much as we can, right? If our stakeholders make a demand that we try, then we try. But for the most part, we do rely on like an actual engagement or action.
I personally have not seen any company successfully solve the view through conversion, and it's usually the highest demanded and hardest to solve problem that I get from demand gen teams.
Absolutely. I don't think that I've personally experienced a tool that sort of has solved this, but I know it's like the main Rubik's Cube of the entire like marketing tooling area. When someone solves for this, I think it'll be a huge win. And maybe I'm sure there's some like partial type solutions that exist out there. But yeah, totally agreed. I think it's something that everyone wants to know about. And what we often do, or what I've done in the past, is rely on proxies for like impression-centric data. Like, okay, we're going to do a huge brand campaign or display push. Let's look at things like branded search. Did that increase over time? There's like all these proxies, and people I'm sure have their own. But again, what I just said is that it ultimately falls back to like a user taking some action. So yeah, agreed.